I would now like to introduce our first speaker, the Honorable Dennis King, Premier of Prince Edward Island. Premier King is a born and raised islander. And myself, having spent many of my summers for the past 15 years at our family cottage on the island myself, I can absolutely see why. After studying journalism in Ontario, Dennis moved back to PEI, where he began his career as a reporter for the Eastern Graphic before earning several awards as editor of the Island Farmer and Atlantic Fish Farming publications. Dennis then went on to work in the public sector. His first foray into government began in communications, which led him to serving under Premier Pat Binns as his Director of Communications. During those years, he gained a keen insight on how government operates and impacts people's lives. He later worked as Director of Communications and Business Development for the Mi'kmaq Confederacy of Prince Edward Island and is Executive Director of the PEI Seafood Processors Association. In 2013, he embraced entrepreneurship, starting his own communications business and later joined forces with public affairs company M5, providing strategic advice to a range of clients. Last year, Dennis King was elected leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Prince Edward Island, and the party went on to win the general election, making Dennis King the 33rd Premier of Prince Edward Island, as well as the minister responsible for intergovernmental affairs, Indigenous relations, and Acadian and Francophone affairs. He also serves as President of Executive Council and leads the Atlantic Growth Strategy alongside premiers as part of the Leadership Committee comprised of federal ministers and Atlantic premiers. Good morning, Premier King. Thank you for being here. The virtual podium is yours.
Thank you so very much. I always say when people start to read your resume, it's much more impressive to listen to than it was to live. So, thank you very much and good morning to everybody. I'd like to first begin by thanking the Public Policy Forum, President and CEO Ed Greenspan, the Board of Directors, the staff, and the members for this invitation to speak today during today's virtual Atlantic Summit. Before I begin my remarks, let me commend the Public Policy Forum for its leadership, its efforts to engage in a diverse cross-section of Canadians in innovative conversations, outside the box thinking and research with the goal of fostering meaningful public policy that benefits us all. And I can't imagine a time where that was more important or critical than now. It's a time now that we need to come together and look at where we've come from. Let's not be hamstrung by that. Let's learn from it and take those advantages and move them forward and define the opportunities that are there as we chart a more prosperous path forward. All of that starts, as always, with good conversation and with a healthy exchange of ideas, and that is why I'm very happy to be here today to participate in that. I have come to government and to politics with a desire to put people at the heart of all of the decisions we make, and people should always be at the heart of policies that we create and the decisions that we make as leaders. I think when we put people first, everything else follows. And while that may sound a little bit simplistic and even a little bit romantic, it really couldn't be more true, especially as we reflect on the impact of COVID-19, the impact it continues to have on Islanders, Atlantic Canadians, Canadians and people from all around the world, as we look to begin the defining of what we are all referring to as the new normal, learning to live with COVID. And I think that the fact that I'm here today might indicate that the new normal might include a little bit of the old normal, because now we have politicians back in front of forums and gatherings, boring people with political speeches, etc. So I take that as a good indication that we're on the path back to something which I believe will be exciting and promising. To state the very obvious, nobody could have imagined that we find ourselves in the midst of this global pandemic today. COVID-19 has literally impacted the lives of everyone around the world in unimaginable ways. Individuals, businesses, industries, and sectors across our region have had to alter their entire worlds, changing how they interact, how they move, and how they operate in a very, very condensed time frame. Provincial responses to the pandemic have had to be, first and foremost, a public health response to protect people from the health impacts of COVID. And as our provinces have carefully and thoughtfully navigated the public health response to COVID-19, it is with some irony that the pandemic has identified potential opportunities on how we need and must do things differently. It has reminded us that we need to plan to grow our economy and to build our resilience as both an individual province and as a region for many years ahead. These opportunities must be explored now, an opportunity to reinvigorate our economy, an opportunity to rethink our role as a hub for business innovation and our role as industry leaders, an opportunity to modernize how people learn in place and not just in classrooms, an opportunity to redevelop our workforce, to allow more flexibility in where people work, to spend more time in their home communities. There's an opportunity to build on our strong commitment of climate change with a renewed focus on advancing clean growth and innovation. And while I reflect on these opportunities daily in the context of Prince Edward Island, our efforts to learn from and live with the non-health related impacts of COVID, I do understand and realize that they align very well with the priorities we share as a region when we speak of the Atlantic Growth Strategy. Our small size is an advantage when it comes to understanding the needs of industries, employers, and job seekers. We have spent time engaging with key organizations and sectors across the province to hear firsthand about workforce challenges and opportunities, which are not unlike those in all of our Atlantic Canadian provinces. Prior to COVID-19, the labor force in Prince Edward Island was increasing and is more diverse than it was a decade ago. The pandemic has certainly impacted year-over-year employment as full and part-time employment has decreased, and it has done so dramatically here in a short time. However, we are focused on recovery, just as our sister provinces are. We are doing our best to get Islanders back to work, whether they be youth, students, or those out of work or laid off, newcomers or mature workers, and that will continue. Businesses and industries are finding innovative approaches to adapt to the current realities of COVID-19. Most sectors are looking at addressing issues such as human resources, logistics, supply chain barriers, regulatory changes, and are planning for the future. Businesses, I've always said, are much further ahead of governments in these respects because they have to be. All sectors have started to pivot and are planning to in order to adapt to the current realities associated with this virus. In particular, there's a focus on digital platforms, including e-commerce, virtual trade shows, online training, online promotion, and as we're indicating here today, there are other ways to get together to speak and to share ideas and to move our region forward other than flying to one location or driving to one location. And we're learning to be more flexible and nimble in that process. We are working across government and industry to create job connections. We want to expand our economy through a skilled workforce, with every Islander working to the best of their ability across every sector of our economy and every region of our province. We also recognize that the workforce is changing. The workplace is changing also. As industries and business communities are adapting with technology, and as jobs evolve and are transformed by technology, we must ensure that our people are not left behind. It is important for governments, businesses, and communities to work together to provide educational and skills development opportunities needed so that we can grow our skilled workforce and create more job opportunities for Islanders and for Atlantic Canadians. This pandemic has shown us that people can learn from home and anywhere else outside the classroom. But we need to modernize the way we deliver education and skills training. We need to rethink how people learn and adapt so that we give them every opportunity to upgrade their skills so they can advance in their current industry or seek new opportunities. It is important that we continue to work together as a region and collaborate with industries and business communities to develop a skilled labor force, not just to address the needs of today, but for the jobs of the future. By working together, we will increase job opportunities. We will empower the labor force with the resources and skills they need to improve their lives and create an opportunity right here in Atlantic Canada to become an innovative business hub for the future. This is also the time to invest in our future by investing in our young people. In Prince Edward Island, I'm proud that my predecessor, and I picked up where he and his government have left off, that we have made tremendous strides in strengthening our early childhood education sector and services, and I'm proud to say that we're a leader in this area across Canada. I look at this not just as a child care provision. This is very much a labor tool that we need to keep investing in. Our province's success is due to strategic planning and the attention to quality, with our primary focus being on what is best for our children. And throughout the pandemic, we have been able to adapt the important supports so that we can provide our children what they need. We've been delivering the school food program to families at home, and we will continue that throughout the summer. The mobility of school student well-being teams and being able to check in on students and families who need a little extra support has been really, really extra special here and has been well received. As we move forward, we will continue to make the intentional investments to maintain and to improve quality programming and supports in this area. After all, as we all believe, our young people really are their future leaders, and it is important that we do what we can to prepare them so they have every opportunity to be the very best that they can be. Perhaps one of the benefits also to the pandemic has been the positive impact on the environment. For many of us, seeing fewer cars on the road as people stayed home to stay safe has allowed us to reflect on the opportunities wrapped up in addressing climate change and clean growth. Just this past week, I was presented with a report by the Premier's Children and Youth Table that outlined a series of recommendations for how government can take into consideration the needs of children and youth in our response to COVID-19, as well as in our everyday decision making. One of the youths around the table took the opportunity to speak about the issue of climate change and how he felt that this would be a good opportunity, a better time than ever, for governments and communities to work together to put environmentally friendly initiatives in place. Things like electric buses and trams, before people start really getting back into the, and falling back into the old processes of moving around together. This would take fewer cars off the road. It would keep our air cleaner. And I like this. Style of thinking. I really like what it forecasts into the future, but I really like that it comes from a special place within our youth. If our children are thinking this way and seeing opportunity to invest in the environment in such a way that we are stimulating the economy, that is a good thing, and so we should continue to follow along with it. Nobody knows better the impacts of climate change than the people of Prince Edward Island and the residents of Atlantic Canada. For Atlantic Canadians, this connection to our land, our water, and our air is deeply personal. The livelihoods of some of our most important industries rely on the vibrancy and the sustainability of our environment. There's a lot of work underway to mitigate and adapt to our changing climate and its impacts to our province and the region. In identifying new ways of doing things to lessen our impact on the environment, while taking advantage of this new green economy, I think is one of our great opportunities. As an example, we are working with our Atlantic colleagues, with the province of Quebec and with the federal government on the Clean Power Roadmap for Atlantic Canada. This is a transformative initiative intended to foster collaboration on a long-term plan for affordable, reliable, and clean power for the region. The work will entail collaboration on a collective vision for building a clean power network across Atlantic Canada. This includes evaluating different energy options, forecasting electricity demand. We're identifying the most cost-effective and critical transmission projects, and using modeling to determine the mix of electricity resources to meet our demand. The federal government has committed up to $2 million over 2 years to support the development of this roadmap, including studies and analysis that will need to be undertaken. But it's an exciting initiative, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. Locally, we've committed to doing our individual part, leading by example as we work toward a greener environment. For example, we are moving our school buses to full electrification over the next 5 years and leading the country in this form of clean transit. We also recognize that in many areas of Prince Edward Island, we do not have access to public transit. And we see the opportunity to leverage the electrified school bus fleet for more public uses, particularly in rural Prince Edward Island, as we work with islanders to change their transportation habits towards the continued reduction of carbon emissions. We are actively looking at the energy we use to operate government. When repairing or replacing provincial buildings, we take every opportunity to make the building more energy efficient and to reduce greenhouse gases. All of our new builds and renovations are carried out with energy efficiency in mind. For example, the latest affordable housing units exceed the National Energy Building Code by 25%. These buildings are heated using electricity, so they are both energy efficient and they are designed to reduce GHG emissions. PEI's provincial biomass installations are now displacing approximately 4.1 million liters of fuel oil annually, with an associated GHG reduction of approximately 11,300 tons. And that's an impressive number, and we want to continue on that road. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to explore the opportunity to have approximately 1/3 of our workforce working from home as a means to further reduce greenhouse gases. We also recognize, and we have become much more bullish on, the economic opportunities that are attached to the greening of our province. As we look to take energy generation down to the community level with our Sustainable Communities Initiative, we are partnering with the University of Prince Edward Island and Holland College to tap into the knowledge and skills of their students and faculty on micro-energy generation, tailor-made to our community needs. Most importantly, communities will have direct involvement and benefit from the infrastructure that goes in to power the homes and businesses. Community-based and ultimately community-led efforts like this will make a real difference for our province as both a renewed approach to energy, but also a means to helping us meet our climate change targets. And I think we all recognize that it's long past time that we look at these two issues as separate. They're united together, and that's the way we will continue to tackle this from a Prince Edward Island perspective, because we do recognize there is so much potential for Prince Edward Island and Atlantic Canada to be the first region in the world to be net zero. Ultimately, if we are to truly make transformative progress, investing in our people and clean growth and empowering our communities, we must address the challenge of connectivity. Prince Edward Island and communities across Atlantic Canada need access to strong, reliable broadband service. Some have compared the importance of broadband today to the early days of the railroad system as it opened up across the country. Ultimately, the benefit of both infrastructures is the opening up to the economy and the movement of goods and services to new markets previously unattainable. As we continue to see the world economy growing and new markets opening, it is important that our businesses and our communities and our industries are able to reach those markets. This pandemic has drawn attention to the inequity in access to high-speed connectivity as children try to carry on their studies while at home learning. Online, people try to work from their kitchen table instead of the office. Conference calls with colleagues are being held over Zoom rather than in person. Healthcare professionals are using telehealth to check in on their patients. Throughout this pandemic, we have seen people united and communities come together thanks to broadband, and we have seen some businesses thrive because they have leveraged e-commerce. We have an opportunity to work together with the major and smaller internet service providers to address connectivity inequity across this region. While it improves the way in which we work, and even how some essential services, such as healthcare, are and will be delivered. It has become an essential quality of life amenity for so many of us. People want to live and work where there is reliable broadband service. It is important that we also recognize the significance of our communities, large and small. This pandemic has reminded us all about their important role in not just delivering municipal services, but in bringing people together to support one another, especially those who are at greater risk of being isolated. Our communities have reminded us that while we may need to stay apart and isolate during unprecedented times, isolation does not mean isolated. We have seen community groups and organizations work together to ensure residents, families, and individuals had what they needed and they never felt alone. We are always stronger when we come together and support each other. So in closing, I would just say that we can build on our successes, set an even more ambitious goal for our individual provinces and our region, not to go back to the way we were before COVID, but let's look to go forward. This is an opportunity for us to consider the Atlantic growth strategy and to adapt it in light of the pandemic. While our objectives remain the same, the journey to achieve some of these things may need to look different. And as we move forward and learn to live with COVID-19, we need to navigate these uncharted waters together. This is not the time to panic and pull back. This is the time to seize opportunity and to invest in our greatest resource, the people of Prince Edward Island, the people of Atlantic Canada. And as I mentioned early on in my remarks, when we focus on people, everything else will follow. So I would say that our parting words should be that this is our time. I know Islanders and Atlantic Canadians are ready to embrace this opportunity. This is about shaping our future. This is about defining who we are. This is about wanting to aspire to be what we want to be. So let's determine what we're going to be, and let's get to work going to be that. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Premier King, and thank you for those remarks. I'm wondering if you have just a few minutes for questions. We have a flurry of questions on our Zoom chat.
Sure. I have to go to the legislature at 2 for question period, so this will be a good prep.
Okay, get ready, get ready. Okay, the first question that's come in is, how are the Atlantic provinces working together to ensure aligned strategies for movement and family reunification across provincial borders within the Maritimes? Is there a regional approach?
Well, thank you very much. That's a really good question, and we get asked that daily. So we have been having weekly calls as the Council of Atlantic Premiers really for the last 11, 12 weeks. We are working on many different strategies of working together. We have tried to, from a PPE perspective, to try to have a regional approach to accessing locally the equipment and material that is needed, that is produced here in the region. And one of the things we've been working on, I guess, has now been classified as an Atlantic bubble, perhaps is what we're calling it, but we're really hoping that sometime in the next few weeks that we can have a freer movement of travel between Atlantic Canadians, individuals, businesses, and realigning those families that want to be back together. We do understand, all of us as premiers, that people who don't live in Atlantic Canada really want to be in Atlantic Canada, particularly in the summer. And we have an opportunity to begin the process for that. We have to do it safely. We can't forget the things that we have learned, but we are really working on that. And I'm hopeful in our call tomorrow with Atlantic Premiers that we might have more to say later in the week, but I'll leave it there.
Great. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
Okay. I know that I'm not supposed to ask you. I should be asking your team, but there's a great question here. It talks about how might PEI, as a smaller and perhaps more nimble place, be a leader in solving some of the issues that we're facing, whether it's affordable housing, available housing. I mean, how do you see PEI being able to lead in some of these challenging issues?
Well, I think pre-COVID that PEI has been leading in many of these issues. I think one of the great advantages is that small size of our province, that we tend to be able to see and personalize more of these issues, perhaps more so than in larger regions. So when we talk about 1% or less than 1% vacancy rate here in PEI, that isn't a number or a stat to us. That is a family member, that is a community member. We generally know who those people are who don't have an ability to get a location. So that allows us to be a little bit more nimble and flexible in terms of those situations. I do think post-COVID, the opportunity now is recognizing that we might have been using our size as maybe as an excuse. I think what we've recognized here is that COVID has flattened the playing field for everybody. It doesn't matter where you live or where you come from. And I think really when you look at quality of life, you look at safety, you look at all the great strengths that we have always been talking about as a region, there's never a better time than now to start to capitalize on those advantages and to use them to springboard us forward. So I think our size really matters now, and I wouldn't trade who we are right now for anybody else. And I think let's go leverage that.
Well, that's a lovely place to leave it, Premier King. Lovely to meet you over video. I look forward to seeing you in PEI very soon.
Well, I hope we can see you all here at PEI soon, but thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the forum. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.